So what do you guys know about Buddhism? Not all at once.
A lot of Asians
Peacefulness.
believe it.
Are they the ones that believe in the inner chakras?
No, that was
They should come on.
the classic last time on. Yeah, right.
They seem to be a very peaceful people.
Okay. What would make you think that?
Oh,
why would you say that?
meditation.
Okay. Anything else? Jay?
Buddha is their kind of leader type.
Okay. What do you guys know about Buddha?
Make peace, not war.
Okay, that's one of his teachings. One of his sayings. Okay, anything else? Do you guys know what Buddha looks like?
He was not fat.
A
Okay.
little old man.
Okay, so anything else? Before we... Alright, well, I'm glad that you guys don't know a lot because I didn't really know a lot either. But now I feel like I know a lot more, but even still, there's just so much more. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. So we're going to go ahead and get some information. So would you say that Buddhism is a religion, or would you say that it's not a religion?
It's more of an ideology.
Okay.
A way
yeah,
of life.
so it's a worldview, right? So what it has to do with is that it is a worldview. It's agnostic worldview. Do you guys remember what that means? No?
It's not religious.
So they don't claim, they don't deny God, but they also don't proclaim faith in God. So that's what that means. So therefore, like, God is completely taken out of the picture in Buddhism. It started in India in the 6th century BC. From there, it spread through all of Asia. It's currently mainly located in Japan and China, and it's now making its way over to the United States and other countries around the world. So basically, where it got started, I wanted to start from the very, very beginning. So where it all started was with this this prince, this boy that was born. His name, I looked up how to pronounce these, but I don't really remember, so just bear with me. Siddhartha Gautama, aka Buddha. So he was born in 562 BC in India. He was a prince. He was born to King Sudahona and his wife, Queen Mayadevi. They were a wealthy king and queen of present-day Nepal, and he was a Nepal prince. So when this boy was born, his father called out fortune tellers, but he didn't just call any kind of fortune teller. He called out the top 8 fortune tellers, like the baddest in the game. He called them out. He said, I need you to come and tell me what you foresee in my son's future, because that was going to be his heir. So he wanted to know. So these fortune tellers came and they told him, and there was a tie. 4 of them said, your son will grow up to be a great spiritual teacher. And then the other 4 said, no, he's going to become to be a great successor. He's going to be the greatest emperor. So the king was then like, well, I called you guys to tell me, and now you're telling me that he's going to be a spiritual teacher and that he's going to be a king. So then what he did was, obviously he wanted an heir. So what he did is that he kind of made the choice for him, and he did that by keeping him within the palace doors. So he kept him inside. He didn't allow for him to go out and experience the world. So he didn't get to do that for some time. So they kind of brought the world from outside to the palace. So they gave him, he obviously had money, he had pleasures. As he grew up, they even brought like girls over. And so he was within the palace for some time. He ended up getting married at 16, and he had a child later on in life. And during this time, he was about in his 20s. He actually went out and journeyed outside of the palace for the first couple of times. So he specifically had 4 trips. During these 4 trips, he witnessed these things called the 4 distressing sights. He witnessed on one trip a sick man. He witnessed on the second trip old age, death, And then on the 4th trip, he met with the wandering monk, and he was very touched and very interested in the monk that he came across, and he talked to him, and he then asked, he asked him about his life, and he said, well, basically I got rid of all of my wealth and all of my riches, and I'm on this mission to seek the end of suffering for mankind. He was very intrigued by that, and he went back into his palace, and he kind of had this moment of realization where he asked himself, like, how can I have all these pleasures and enjoy them knowing that there is suffering out for mankind? How can I do that? It's selfish of me by staying here. I need to do something. So he felt that it was his mission to find an answer to this question, to this problem. And so we know that suffering is all around us. What are some things that make you suffer? Just throw them out.
Sickness.
Okay, sickness. When we're sick, you're miserable, you're in pain. Sometimes you're like in actual physical pain, you're like cringing, things like that. Old age, you're supposed to be my assistant. Old age, when you're old, you have ache, you have pain, you find it hard to get around. The older you get, you start to get, your body starts deteriorating, and some faster than others. And then death. None of us obviously want to die. At least that's the thought. But and then when someone does die, you feel this like deep sorrow, and you're saddened, and well, at least in the bigger scheme of things. Other things that we suffer from are when we're born. Marilyn should know this. What's the first thing when a woman gives birth to a child? Like that happens right after she gives birth. The baby.
They cut the cord.
No, that's a good one. He knows. He's an expert. He's a dad. Okay, but what happens after?
Cries.
So cries. So why do they cry?
First breath, air in the lungs.
Right. Okay, and it's painful. So even bringing in taking in your first breath, it's painful. It causes pain. You being around people you don't necessarily like can be sometimes painful, right? I mean, we went to the graduation for JAR like 2 weeks ago, and it was kind of painful hearing all of the discourses that they gave. They were pretty long. Being apart from the people we love, being apart from them, and then when we're reunited, we're overwhelmed by this overwhelming joy and happiness that we feel. These are all kinds of problems and disappointments that we endure throughout our life, and each one falls under one of these criteria here. So then the prince, he decided he was going to do something about it. So about 29 years of age, he was born and held within the palace. He left his wife, he abandoned his son, and he devoted his life to helping those who were suffering. And he decided to go on this mission to seek to end human suffering and ultimately reach this enlightenment. So how did he get started? Was that it all started with these questions that he had after the trips that he made. Why is man unhappy? How can I, solve this problem? And he did all sorts of things. He left, and for 6 years, he did all series of things. He went from one extreme to the other. He started on one side when he would starve himself. He would starve himself to a point where he was unable to move, and in that moment he realized, well, starving myself isn't giving me the answer that I need. So maybe I should start starving myself. So then he started eating again. He got healthy again. He indulged in himself. He gave in to those pleasures that he had denied himself of. He tortured himself in different ways to provoke, hoping that this pain would provoke some type of enlightenment from within. And after 6 years of doing that and bouncing back and forth trying to get this answer, he sat in this lotus position, which is commonly the position that monks sit in to meditate. And he sat under this tree, this Bodhi tree. It's an Indian tree, and he sat underneath there, and he was there for 49 days. He sat. And this man wasn't by himself. At this point, he had already had followers. And these followers, either they believed that what he was doing was something that was good. They believed in him and saw that he was striving for goodness and trying to be enlightened. And other followers were kind of like, what, this guy is a trip. Why is he starving himself? He's torturing himself. And obviously, he was the prince. And so he had a multitude of people around. So he sat there for 46 days. He ate roots, leaves, and small bugs to kind of keep himself from dying. And he endured more hardships than anyone else. And so once he, so 49 days later, that's how long it took. He sat in this tree and he said, okay, I'm not going to get up until I get this answer. Like, I've been seeking it for some time now. I haven't received it. Like, I need to do something different than what I've been doing, right? So he sat there 49 days later, and then finally he woke. And this is where we get the term Buddha. There are these things called the Four Truths. And what they are, one is the realization that all life is suffering. And that's really was the reason that prompted his journey, that he realized that there was suffering. And the suffering, again, came from the four disturbing sights that he had seen: sickness, old age, the monk, and death. And then, two, the cause of suffering is selfish desires. And that's the selfish desires that we have, what we have compared to what we don't have. And these desires really can be good or bad. Like, you give into like your pleasures of your flesh, or you have other desires which it wouldn't necessarily be considered like a bad desire. Like, you want to get fit, you want to have a bigger house, you want to have more money, you want to become more educated. Some of us would say that those are not bad desires or bad goals. But in Buddhism, it's still considered a selfish desire because it's what you want. Three, if we remove the desire, you remove suffering. So that's that's the root of it. So if you remove this, you're left without suffering, right? So it's kind of, the way of thinking it is, if you change your mindset, it's not really the circumstance you're in, but rather if you look at it differently and train your mind to see it differently, it will be different and you'll see it for what it really is. 4, the pathway to eliminating suffering. So now that we identified what causes suffering, which is what?
Desire.
Cancer.
Oh.
Desires. And then in order to, once we remove the desires, we therefore have no suffering left. And how do we get there? It's considered like the map to enlightenment. Oh, sorry, this one's backwards. Okay, it's the noble eightfold. So this one here, oh, I know why I said that. Okay, so we're gonna, before we talk about that one, we're gonna talk about the core principles, and these are the top 3, and that's, they believe in rebirth and reincarnation. So someone give me the definition of reincarnation, or just like the overall consensus of reincarnation. Irene. It's not hard.
Huh?
Reincarnation. In your own words. In your own words.
Well, you die, turn into an animal.
Okay, that's a little bit. Joseph.
I would say it's pretty close, except that it doesn't always have to be an animal.
Right. What is it based off of? Which is
you come back in another life based on how you lived your first
yeah,
life.
so that's karma. We're all familiar with karma, right? Okay, so there is 2 types of karma. What type of karma are there?
Bad and good.
Bad and good karma. So what would you consider bad karma? Julia.
Going out now. Ooh, bad.
Bad karma.
You do something
Like,
Bad girl.
yeah, pretty much.
So give me an example.
Steal.
Break the leg.
You what? You break someone's leg?
Yeah.
Okay. What would be considered good karma? Look at the time.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you were to like give somebody like $5 and then you like go into like McDonald's or whatever and the person in front of you pays your thing. Like,
Okay, good, that's karma. It's an action, right? So it's something that you do. And if it's a good thing that you do, it'd be considered good. If it's bad, bad karma. And then lastly is nirvana, which is the release. So nirvana is a state of rest when people have relieved themselves or emptied themselves of all earthly desires or all of your selfish desires. So once you release that, you are in a state of nirvana. And we're going to come back to this later on, so just take note of the stuff we just covered. So how does that lead us to the Noble Eightfold is that because they believe in reincarnation or rebirth, you have multiple sets of lives where you come back, right? And so each time that you come back, you're supposed to learn from your previous life and ultimately reach nirvana.
Get closer to
Yes, get closer to it. And how do you get closer to that nirvana state? It's by following these 8 things, which are, again, changing your perspective and your mindset. So you have the right view, the right intentions, the right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, right mindfulness. And these are the 8. So I'm going to give you guys an example that I found of like his teaching. And actually, if I can have Jay, can you read from the back there?
Yeah.
Not that you don't know how to read, I just mean like,
Yeah.
is it glare? Is you good?
No.
Okay, and we can change the name to like, let's use Kim, because it starts with a K, the lady's name. So there's this lady, and her name is Kigasagotami, but we're just going to go with Kim for this example. Kim, I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Well, once there was a woman named Kim whose firstborn son died, and she was so stricken with grief that she roamed the streets carrying the dead body and asking for help to bring her son back to life. A kind and wise man took her to the Buddha. The Buddha.
Real quick. Okay, so we all know where this is going. Okay, does anybody think this is familiar to like, do you guys know in Mexico they have like the Llorona? Doesn't it remind you of that? Like we're going, okay, no. Go ahead.
And the Buddha told her, "Fetch me a handful of mustard seeds, and I will bring your child back to life." Joyfully, Kim started off to get them. Then the Buddha added, "But the seeds must come from a family that has not known death." So Kim went from the door to door in the whole village asking for the mustard seeds, but everyone said, "Oh, there has been many deaths here. I lost my father, I lost my sister." She could not find a single household that had not been visited by death. And finally, Kim returned to the Buddha and said, "There is death in every family. Everyone dies. Now I understand your teaching." And the Buddha said, "No one can escape the death and unhappiness. If people expect only happiness in life, they will be disappointed."
So that's pretty self-explanatory. Did you guys kind of get to where she realized? Because it took me like I read it through, but I kind of read it really fast. And then when I got to the fact where it says, "There is death in every family, everyone dies," now I understand your teaching. And I was like, wait, what was he teaching? And then I went back and I read it like kind of slowly, and I was like, oh, well, obviously he was teaching her like you're not the only one who's enduring this pain because you've lost your son, but rather, be conscious that other people have also lost loved ones, and this type of suffering is not one that you're experiencing on your own or that no one has endured before. Does that make sense?
Wow.
Yeah, like it was very, I don't know, I just had this moment like, oh, that's what it was like. Oh.
So we take comfort in knowing.
So misery likes company.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of per se. Are you guys familiar with that? Yeah, right. Okay. So just like any other worldview and almost like religion or belief, there are conservative and there are liberals. In Buddhism, there's like different types of Buddhism, and mostly it's kind of determined by location. Depending on where you're located, it's usually typically the type of Buddhist that you are. So there are the conservative, which are these names, Theravada, and there is the Mahayana, and the Mahayana are the liberal Buddhist. And so these are the two extremes, and then obviously there's people who fall in between these two, like, and within the line. So some of the teachings for the conservative is that it's followed by teaching or philosophy, whereas the liberals, they're followed by reference to higher beings, more like religion. The conservatives strive for wisdom first, knowledge, whereas the liberals, compassion is the highest virtue. And it has a lot, but I'm not going to go through them, but just know that there's two different types. And then I guess I can throw in here, there's just a lot of information, but you guys are familiar, you guys know what a monk looks like, right? And you've noticed that they wear these robes. think there's one back here. Oh, it's right here. So it also depends on like the robes that they wear reflect. You would know what kind of monk or kind of Buddhist the monk is by the robes that they wear. And I left my journal, so hold on. Oh, okay. So the conservative Buddhists wear the more simple monks. The robes, and the liberal ones wear the more like the higher end stuff. So one would wear. There's 3 sets to it, and usually the way that it's worn is that it covers the shoulders, but then there's others that show one shoulder off, and they need to wear these whenever they're in these when they are in meditation and seeking that enlightenment. And they are, depending on where you're located and depending on what type of Buddhist you are, they're the color. For instance, in China, you would wear brown, gray, or blue, whereas in Japan you would wear black and gray. And then the conservative Buddhists wear this reddish yellow brown looking one, which is called a kasaya. I think that's what it's called. And then you'll notice that all of them are bald, right? So do you guys can take a guess why they are bald? Is it because they really have no hair?
No,
Or purposely?
to enter their temple, you have to shave your head bald.
Okay. And what does that signify? Like having a bald head purposely, intentfully in this type of setting, or?
Humility.
Yeah. So it's a sign of humility. It's a sign of you shedding your self-desire. Obviously, some men are concerned with, their hair, and definitely it can become one of these things where you take pride in that, and again, it goes back to that desire, to that selfish desire that you have, where you could be vain or not. So those are some things. So just from the outside looking in, you can pick up some things on what a monk looks like and what it means, because there is meaning behind it. So that's where we were. So Buddha went ahead and he died at 80 years old in 482 BC, and he reached Mahaparinirvana, which is the ultimate state of peace, and you've gotten rid of all your desires. So there's nirvana, and then this is like one step above that. This is like the ultimate goal for a Buddhist. For Buddha, he's been one of the only ones that have reached that level. And so when he died, they realized, well, there was no way they hadn't written down any of his teachings. There was nothing that they could kind of like go back on and, okay, well, how are we going to keep this movement going? So what they did is that, let me find his name. There was one disciple, remember I told you that he had followers? There was one disciple who actually went ahead and, there was one disciple, and I forgot what had his name, but I forgot his name. There was this one disciple who called a council meeting. He called 500 monks to come forth and meet to discuss, like, what are we going to do now with this information that was given to us? Like, we need to keep it going. So he called a meeting, and it was the first council meeting. And one of the people that they invited was Ananda, and Ananda was Buddha's loyal, like, assistant. He was with him because obviously when he was meditating, he was around him looking out for him. So it was kind of like an assistant. And so this Ananda, he went ahead and he had this power of having the ability to recite word for word of what Buddha said. And so he was invited to attend this council meeting, but there was a problem leading up to the council meeting because he was always looking out for Buddha and keeping him safe and just looking out for him. He never really meditated himself because he was always looking out for him, and therefore he hadn't reached this state of enlightenment like the other 500. So it just so happened that the night before the meeting, he became enlightened, and he was able to attend the meeting the next day. So he went to this meeting, and they started reciting. Very convenient, right? And so he went ahead and he went to this meeting. They gathered together, and they started to recite word for word of what Buddha had said and what his teachings were and his beliefs on life. And so they came, as Christians we have the Bible. Mormons have the Bible, and what else do they have? Book of Mormon. And so in Buddhism they have this book. It's a series actually, and it's called the Tripitaka. Sorry guys, I don't really know how to pronounce these names. And so these are some facts on it. And so this council met for 7 months, and during those 7 months they went ahead and wrote down all of the Buddha's sermons, teaching, and his life philosophy. And it had to be approved by all the councilmen, and they could witness that Ananda was telling the truth because most of them had been with Buddha for quite some time, and so they could attest, okay, what he's saying is true. So they compiled the teachings, the sermons, his philosophies. It's 10 times the size of the Bible, so it's not just one book. It's like a whole volume of books, like an encyclopedia. And the disciple that summoned the 500 was Mahakassapa, that was his name. And the council took place in Rajir, India, and it's called the 3 baskets because there's 3 collections of these of this series. The first section of the book is the Vinaya Pitaka, and it contains 3 books, and these are the precepts of monks and nuns. The second is the Sutta Pitaka, which 5 volumes of discourses that he gave throughout his life during those 45 years of teaching. The third is the Abhidharma, and that's a higher teaching. It contains 7 books of consciousness, life, and death, and it is the most difficult to understand and read of all the 3. And only certain monks can interpret it because it's so. It's very difficult to really understand, and you can't understand it until you reach that point of enlightenment. And again, it took about 7 months to compile it and approve it by the council. So this, I know it's a lot of information, and it's you're kind of going to walk out of here, you're not going to remember most of it, but if you can remember some of it, that'd be great. And now that I think it's really important to understand it, Buddhism, so that way we can look into, well, what are the differences between Buddhism and Christianity. And that's where we're going to start today. And I'm only going to be able to go for the first point. So what would you say that the goal of Buddhism is, based on what we just went over?
To reach enlightenment.
Okay, and why do we need to reach enlightenment? What's the root?
And suffering.
Jinx.
So there's one, you realize there is a problem, and this problem is that there is suffering. And now what do we go, so what the goal of Buddhism is give humanity, like they're doing us a favor, because they're trying to find a way to end suffering, right? Christianity claims that Jesus Christ has paid for our suffering, and has paid for our sin, and we're able to overcome and endure suffering through Him, through God, because they gave us the Holy Spirit, right? So what does Buddhism teach about God? So what's the first thing that I said? What kind of worldview is Buddhism?
Gnostic.
Agnostic. And that means that what does that mean?
They don't
They don't believe or
believe it or deny it.
Okay. And what does Christianity teach on God? We're going to look, you guys can get your Bibles. We're going to read a couple of verses. And we're only going to go through the 1 point, so just a couple more minutes, guys. So, let's read Ecclesiastes chapter 12. And we're going to read verses 1 through 14. If I can have Jesse read 1 through 7. And then if I could have David read. Actually, Josh, let me have Josh read 8 through 14. So just when you're ready. So who wrote this chapter? This book? No, Ecclesiastes. Actually, wait, hold on. Let's read first. Okay, so Jessica, when you're ready.
who's reading? Oh, Jesse. So that's the problem.
Chapter 12, verse 1 through 7, please.
Chapter 12, verse 1. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men are bent, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those who look through the windows are dim, and the doors on the street are shut, when the sound of the grinding is low, and the one rises up to the sound of the bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low. They are afraid also of what is high, and terrors are in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshoppers drags itself along, and the desires fails, because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets, before the silver cords and snap of the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain of the wheel, broken at the
Cistern.
And the dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. 1 through 7, right?
Yeah, and then Josh, can you read 8 through 14?
Meaningless, the teacher. Everything is meaningless. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads. They are collected saying like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. He warned my son of anything in addition to them, of making many books there is no end, and much study worries the body. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil.
Okay, so just give us the 411. Who wrote this?
So Solomon wrote this, but I don't know that the last verses, it seems like somebody's talking about Solomon, so I don't know that Solomon wrote the last verses.
Portions of it. So
Yeah.
if we look on the study that we have on verse 13 and 14, which says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter, which is fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all, for God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So if we look at these verses that we just read, and look at what he's saying in the last couple sentences, it's definitely giving us this idea to put God before all things, to to follow in his commandments, to fear God and follow God. And so how could Solomon say these words, which, or, I guess in retrospect, why would there be this importance of installing that or saying that? Anyone? No? So who was Solomon? We'll start there.
Very wise.
King of Israel.
King, okay. His father was? David. And what was said about Solomon? What was he?
Wisest.
The wisest man. Okay. And here is Buddha, self-proclaimed that he is he has reached this epitome of enlightenment, right? And that he's just at the top of his game. And here is another, based on given the Bible, we're told that this man Solomon was the wisest of them all, and Buddha's telling us, let's find an answer to an end to the suffering by ridding yourself of your desires and by doing all these things, and that's how we're going to end suffering. And here is a man of God telling us what? And that to fear God first, right? To put God first. Whereas in Buddhism, they don't even acknowledge God. There is no disbelief, but there is no belief. So you're kind of, I don't know if it's worse or not, but there it stands, right? And then, what time is it? Okay, we'll read this last one, and then we'll go ahead and so if you can read Psalms 19:1, Rowling. And then Kim, can you read Romans 1:20?
Alright, he's got it.
Okay, go ahead and read.
To the quartermaster of Psalm of David, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork.
And then Kim, can you read Romans?
What was it again?
Romans 1:20. Bradley, can you read it one more time, a little louder, please?
Alright. To the quartermaster, a psalm of David, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork.
See, he's reading it again.
Kim?
Right. Okay. So it says, the invisible things about him, his eternal power and deity, have been clearly seen since the creation of the world and are understood by the things that are made, so that they are without excuse.
Okay, so we just read some verses. So one stance that we could just, I guess, take this in is that Buddhism doesn't believe in God, nor, right? We know that they don't confirm, they don't deny. So as Christians, our truth is that
There is
a God. And in the verses that we just read, we can, what is it basically saying? It's saying that even the things that we see, like creation itself, is an example, is a evidence of God's power, of his greatness, of his existence. So right off the bat, we can just confirm that God exists. And we see these things, these beautiful, beautiful, God's beautiful creation, one of them including ourselves. And so we're going to go ahead and pause here. We're going to talk about 2 other points in the next class, and hopefully you guys can all come back. And we'll go ahead and continue on. But if anything, just if you took anything, it's that from the class, it's that obviously you gain some knowledge of what Buddhism is, and when it comes to their non-belief in God or agnostic point of view, we know that there is a God, and so we're going to go ahead and stand up and pray.